Since then, at an uncertain hour, that agony returns, until my ghastly tale is told, this heart within me burns. This is a quote from a poem called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, written in 1797 by the British poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It is a story about a sea voyager that has to constantly retell the horrific odyssey that he was on. Many games today on the marketplace either take you through a grand adventure or a horrifying accident. What makes our game different is that it has you confront what happens after. So how do you survive awful guilt? That is the question of our game, AngoriS. AngoriS is a single-player, puzzle platformer, ambiental horror game. That is a lot of words, but together they create a micro-genre which has made many successful games like Playdead's Limbo and Inside and Tajir Studios' Little Nightmares. They all have their own distinct visual identities as well as game mechanics, and we would like to take our own spin on this genre. You play as the mariner. He's our silent protagonist with an albatross chained around his neck to represent the guilt that he can never actually take off. One stormy evening, he wakes up hearing noise outside. He goes up on the ship's deck where all of the other crewmates are and sees an albatross land. He tries to approach it, but in a split second, all 200 of his crewmates are killed. The ship mysteriously starts sinking, and then he realizes that there is an impossible underground lighthouse that he must go to. There will be 7 acts, and the first tutorial act is the only act which will take outside of the lighthouse. This will be our gameplay. This is from the Act 2, where the lighthouse represents a ship graveyard. The main anchors of our game are visual storytelling, which is segmented into 2 parts. There is the foreground, which is the conscious, the clear, what the mariner can see. And then there is the background, which is the unconscious residue playing minds on the character. Just like grief that comes in waves, our main anchor is the never-ending cycle. Once you reach the top of the lighthouse, you're plunged right back to the beginning. And then there is the haunting guilt, which is represented through the ambiental, minimalist, and sometimes orchestral sounds, which are accompanied by sound effects such as footsteps, monsters growling, and the occasional foghorn. Our core gameplay features would include physical puzzles that you as a character would have to solve, visual indication of the things that the character can interact with, a minimalist show-don't-tell approach with no UI. We want you to focus on the atmosphere rather than text or the story, and death is a mechanic which would look something like this. Let's say you're next to a gate, and on the other side there is a monster growling at you. You cannot fight it, you cannot kill it. You open the gate and you try running away. It chases after you and it kills you. Once you respawn again, you find that the gate is already open and that the monster is feasting on your previous gameplay remains. Thus, you're able to walk past it and continue on. Due to its dark and mature themes, our audiences would be 16+. It would be for fans of the ambiental horror, as well as puzzle platformer genres and casual gamers. The gameplay would last around 8 hours, and we would release it on PC and all major platforms with the price ranging from $10 to $20 US. This is our crew: Jelena, Eva, Lazar, Luka, and I am Mina. And at the end, we would like to ask you, how do you rise above guilt? Our answer is by accepting that it will always be there. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Eddie. He's a depressed middle-aged man, and he's currently having a midlife crisis. He's thinking about a specific memory he had in his college days when he sold a guitar, a very important guitar in his life, for just a couple of bucks. And he's thinking to himself, maybe if I didn't sell this guitar, I could have still become a musician. I wouldn't be selling these records. And now he goes into this overthinking phase, and he's thinking to himself, maybe if I went back to the past and changed these memories, maybe my life would be different. And lucky for Eddie, we gave him that chance. Shot. Welcome to our video game, the songs we used to sing. Eddie now, face down, ass up like an ostrich, is now going through a magical, whimsical adventure through his most traumatic memories. Fun, right? Well, we tried to make it fun. He now has to dive inside the music box that represents his mind and try to fix it because the music box itself is broken. It's broken into these destroyed notches. Every notch is a memory. Every memory is a level. By completing a level, he is closer and closer to completing the music box itself. Eddie, for some reason, remembers that song, but just can't put his mind to it from where it's from. But we're going to get back to that. Let's first jump into a memory. And look, it's the same memory from before. Now, we just plop Eddie in, boom. Now he can walk around this little room, and by pointing and clicking to different objects of your interest, he's going to analyze it and say something about it. But still, even though he's inside the memories of his own mind, he does not have the gall to change anything about it. So he has to have some friends to help him. Unfortunately for Eddie, he does not have any friends. So he's going to be using imaginary friends. Because right before he face-planted onto the ground, he saw 2 album covers. And then he sucked them inside his mind and created characters behind these 2 figures. One is Eddie Bermudo. He calls, not Eddie Bermudo, Fray Bermudo. He's Eddie. It's a Spanish inquisitor, and the other is Donna Matrix, a bubblegum pop star. By using their specific powers inside his memories, he can finally change them. So, by using memory vision, patent pending, he can see other specific objects that you can interact with. Now, by pressing E, you switch between these characters. So, if you go and turn into Fray Bermudo, with his wrath of God, he can change different objects inside the memory. He can break them, destroy them, tear them apart. It's all up to you as the player to see what the outcomes will be. By being Donna Matrix, you control the thoughts of other people. By controlling their thoughts, you change their behaviors. And by changing their behaviors, you change the memory. So it's more about experimentation to see what's going to happen if I do this with Bermudo and do this with Donna. By changing their outcomes, you find out the solution to the puzzles and make these unpleasant, traumatic memories into pleasant ones. So that's basically the core loop of our game. You go from one memory to another, and then until you fix the music box, that's when you finish the game. So you go, experiment with the memories, have fun with them, you lock in an outcome that makes this memory pleasant, and then you repeat it. Very simple. But it's not only going to be college, it's going to be other things. Baby Eddie, high school Eddie, and also grade school Eddie. This is kind of the emotional capacity we want you to feel. We want you to laugh, we want you to get a little bit grossed out, and then when you least expect it, we hit you with the emotional twist. And it's basically, there's no better trio than a Spanish inquisitor, a bubblegum pop star, and a depressed middle-aged man. It's the classic trio. Then, these are our pillars. Narrative puzzle dependency, it's smart words, but simply speaking, we don't want you to press E constantly to get through the story. We want you to play the puzzles, see what's going to happen, and then you learn a little bit about Eddie, or learn a little bit about the story, and it's dependent in a way. Combining outcomes, because we don't want to be a logical puzzle game where you just look at 2 things constantly. You poke the bear in a way. You see what happens when you do something in a memory. And soft tone hard truths is basically just, we want you to go through an emotional roller coaster and hit you where you least expect it. Because the final memory, the song of the music box, is Eddie's song when he played in high school. And now when you look at this memory, it doesn't really work. It's Eddie and it's two imaginary friends playing a song, but it's real to Eddie. And that's what's important. It doesn't matter what your memories are, it matters how you feel about them. And by changing how you feel about these memories, you change as a person. And changing is the constant for, at least what I think, is for human beings to do. And we hope that would resonate with the player. Because our players are narrative-driven, they like puzzles, and the puzzles are not too hard, so they're mostly, we would attract a casual audience. The competitors that are also our inspirations, we value ourselves similarly with $15. And because it is a point-and-click game, it's going to be PC exclusive. And yeah, the songs we used to sing, we're Team Brainfog. Thank you.
We all feel stressed, overwhelmed, almost every day in our life. Work, school, social interactions, you name it. In these moments, we often want to enter a world made from our rules, so we can understand things our way. Let's make an example. Our player, student, soon to be a high schooler, visual learner, explorer, somebody who wants to experience things rather than just read them from a book and memorize for school. Traditional learning is not really fun. I would rather say it's boring. You come home, open a book, and all you see are definitions, formulas, and just a bunch of text on paper. But what if learning wasn't like this? What if learning wasn't just reading, but rather something you experience, explore, something you live through? This is the idea of our game, Dreamstone. So, what is this game? Dreamstone is a first-person action-adventure puzzle game aimed to release on PC and major consoles for around $15. Our main audience are kids who are entering a journey of high school. We tell the story of Mike, a student who is going through high school barely passing his grades. He just doesn't really understand it. He is a creative person. His best work comes from inside his head through imagination. Games put him in a world where he can when he can truly express himself and truly feel like himself. On his last year of high school, he is on the verge of failing. His parents take action, taking away his games, seeing them as just a distraction. This is when Mike feels mostly lost and sees no way forward. His grandmother sees this. She doesn't see someone who doesn't want to learn, but someone who needs a different approach. That's when she gives him something unexpected, a mystery stone. One day, this stone activates inside his locker and puts Mike in a lucid dream world made from his own imagination. That is where he meets Peb, a living spirit of the stone. Together, they explore subjects through unique and dangerous adventures. To move forward in life, Mike must first make his way through these worlds, because in our game, future in his real life is determined by his success in these worlds. This is one of these places, a space shaped by math. Structural and logical, it is not only represented visually, but also through our music. Okay, so how does the player actually interact with this world? We see movement is a core part of our experience. Players will use it to go through our worlds, to dodge obstacles, and even to defend themselves if needed. Combat serves as a symbolic message. These are stuff Mike struggles with. For our players, The goal might just be to defeat these enemies. But for Mike, the goal is different. He needs to understand and overcome his insecurities. And lastly, puzzles are a center of our gameplay. We do not want to give our players all the answers they need to go through the level, but actually to experiment, observe, and figure out things their way. Each of our worlds has its own visual identity. As you see in math world, you might see something structural, geometrical. But for an example, an art-based world can feel fluid, colorful, unpredictable. This makes every world fresh and memorable in its own way. Previously, you heard a little snippet of our music. Now, I would like you to focus on it. Let's hear how music shapes the world in Dreamstone. This is how we aim to bring life to these places. Now, let's talk inspiration. Dreamstone is influenced by games like It Takes Two, High on Life, and Psychonauts. What connects these games is putting a player in a place that feels imaginative, but yet still believable. Also, like It Takes Two, we aim to make our levels with their own rules, making the player adapt to each level in its own way. But Dreamstone is different. It doesn't change what you learn. It changes how you see it. We do not aim to sell just a game. We aim to sell an idea. The idea that we need to take different approach to stuff we want to know. Because sometimes the best way to understand things in life is to change the way you look at it. We are Dreamcatchers, and thank you so much for listening.
Hey, thank you for the presentation.
In a world without the sun as we know it, in a dark forest full of monsters, the only way for humans to survive is living together in harmony with the three divine foxes who provide them with light and life. Humans live in a little wayfaring village, and everything was fine until one day one of the foxes got sick and it only had 7 days left to live. Our hero Macy is a brave and crafty little girl from the village. Prior to the fox getting sick, her mother also got sick and couldn't continue on with the village. Her father also stayed with the mother, and they were left behind in the darkness. After she died, her dad simply vanished. When the fox got sick, Macy decides to do something about it herself because everybody else gave up. So she needs to venture into the darkest depths of the forest in order to find the cure. Flicker of the Fur is a top-down pixel art story-driven exploration game with survival elements. In the game, players craft tools in order to survive in the darkness, go and search for any materials that could be useful, fight off monsters that attack, and then finally return back to the safety to craft more tools. This crafting system revolves around the fur of the foxes, which carries the same properties as the foxes themselves. Macy has to be real careful about crafting tools because there's only a limited amount of fur. With those tools, she can defend against any monsters who were also humans once, but after spending so much time in the darkness, they became like zombies and attack anyone. However, not all of those monsters have gone completely insane. Some of them have been human not that long ago, so Macy can choose to try and find whatever's left of humanity inside them and even get some information. why does she need to return to those foxes and why are they so important? Well, each of the 3 foxes provides a different kind of light. One of them provides physical and mental well-being for humans. Another provides protection from any monsters who might attack. And the third one makes the trees and the bushes bear fruits for everyone to eat. The reason one of those foxes got sick is because someone fed it a poisonous fruit from the tree of enlightenment, which is located deep in the forest. But who would even do such a thing? The foxes are everything in this world. Well, after vanishing in the darkness and being gone for some time, Macy's father went a little bit insane. He also felt a lot of grief because his wife died, and he felt a little bit of a need for revenge for everyone who left. So he decides to poison the fox, and after that he went back to the tree to guard it from anyone taking another fruit to make the cure. So at the end of the game, Macy has to choose between fighting him to get the fruit or trying to persuade him in a way to help her. So that was the game. Now, who can play this game? The main audience would be people 13 and above who are nostalgic and curious, who like narrative-driven games, a little bit of a challenge, and a combination of whimsy and dread. Our main inspiration in terms of world building is Princess Mononoke, but in terms of gameplay and survival, Don't Starve would be our main competitor and inspiration. Some of our other competitors and also sources of inspiration include Kena, Bridge of Spirits, Undertale, and Darkwood. Our game would sell on PC and the major consoles at about $10. Here we can see how the music reflects the depth that the Macy is at in the forest. The main pillars of our game design include high risk and high reward. The deeper you go into the forest, the more dangerous it is, but the more resources you can find. Every scrap counts. Macy only has limited amounts of resources, so she needs to be really careful about picking what tools she can craft, and also outsmart and don't outfight. A little girl can't really wrestle with the monsters, so she has to be tactical about combat and also try to avoid any unnecessary conflict. Our team, Wayfarers, Nemanja, Tara, Antonije, Danica, and I'm Mihailo, and I would like to leave you with one last question. Do you take the easy route, or do you find the human inside? Thank you very much.
Good job. You killed them all, like they told you to. But at what cost? There are no winners in war. This is our psychological horror action game, Prodan. This is Prodan, a 53-year-old war veteran who left the war traumatized. And to cope with that, he has a very strict routine that he follows every day. For 10 years, after his service, he's been trying to live a peaceful and quiet life in his isolated cabin. This is his yard. There are a couple of hotspots and places where he spends most of his time in, like his already mentioned cabin, his shed, or his garden. And this is the playable area of our game. The game consists of several days, during which Pradhan's average day would look something like this. Firstly, he wakes up. After that, he does his chores, and the chores are there to teach us how to use the tools, and also as a peaceful moment in our game. After that, cockroaches start appearing, so he has to start fighting them. And he fights them using the tools that he used to do his chores with. Also, while fighting, he will have to complete several tasks. After that, Pradhan goes back to sleep, and the loop keeps repeating over and over. There are several types of cockroaches that Pradhan will have to fight. The small ones, the bigger ones, and also special types of cockroaches. And as the days pass, cockroaches start resembling humans more and more. Some of them try to walk on two legs, some of them wear human clothes, and some of them even smoke cigarettes. The cockroach smoking a cigarette in a chair is General Domet. He is one of the bosses, and he resembles Pradhan's old general from war. There are also different types of special cockroaches that all have their own unique attacks and their own radio station. Now, as the days pass, the voices of cockroaches start sounding like human voices more and more as well. There are several types of weapons available to the player, and different weapons work better with different types of cockroaches. For example, the insecticide works very well with the smaller cockroaches, while sledgehammer works very well with the bigger ones. Also, since Pradhan has two hands, he can combine different types of weapons, and also there would be weapons that would need both hands for using. Now, hitting cockroaches in different spots can affect them differently. For example, if you hit the cockroach in its shell, you will bounce back, but if you hit it in its head, you will manage to kill it. Another example of this would be cutting off limbs of cockroaches. This is what our UI would look like. We have a health bar, and if you want to play Pradhan with style, we have a style rating system, and a list of active tasks. Now, as the game progresses, Pradhan's surroundings starts getting bigger and bigger, and that is our unique selling point. While the playable area stays the same, it gets more complicated, and it creates potential for interesting level design and gameplay. Our game is rooted in 3 game design pillars. First, every day begins with slow-paced tasks and ends with fast-paced combat. Second, our environment is constantly evolving. And third, different weapons affect cockroaches in different types of ways. If you are a fan of pure combat, you can try playing Endless mode. It unlocks after you finish the original story mode, and your only task is to fight, and to collect as many style points as you can. Now, our target audience would be action and psychological horror players who can enjoy a subtle symbolic narrative. Our price would be around $15, and our competitors are games like Ultra Kill or Devil May Cry. Thank you so much. We are Bear Wire Collective.
There are many reasons we love detective stories. We love their atmosphere. We adore the detectives. The cigarette-smoking, Nietzschean, nonchalant detectives in the fog. But sometimes we also identify with them, and we become as obsessed with solving their case as they are. This is exactly the experience we want to give the players of our game. Where is Anne? The name of our game is a question, and you as a player need to answer it and find Anne. Where is Anne is a first-person 2D, 3D narrative puzzle game. in which you will be able to walk around the streets of pre-Haussmann Paris. Pre-Haussmann Paris was Paris of 1815, before the renovations which brought him to what we know him as today. What does that mean for our player? You will be able to walk very narrow streets that are poorly lit, and the whole city is like a maze. As you can see here, you will also be able to approach various NPCs and try to gain information about a case. Once you do that, it will look something like this. And to make your job easier for you, you will be able to write down everything in your notebook in order not to forget it. But the question is, who is Anne? And who you will be playing as? You would play as Lucien Morel, a 45-year-old detective. And Anne is your daughter. You used to be a passionate revolutionary, but everything changed once his 12-year-old daughter disappeared. Just like the first detective ever to exist in 1815 Paris, François Vidocq, our detective also works for the French police. He gains all the resources he needs, and because he knows a lot of information about various sketchy people in the city, he gladly gives those back, all in order to find his daughter. Lucien doesn't have his right hand, and he is dealing with phantom pain, which is a pain of a part of his body that is no longer there. So how opium affects our gameplay, I will talk about later. Our game loop is very simple. It is a classic detective loop. You can explore Paris, its taverns, bars, narrow alleys. You can find clues by talking to various people, and then you can analyze them. And this is the core of our game, solving puzzles and trying to use the information you found in a very productive way. To show you how your movement can look like, this is a map of Paris. You will be able to walk around it freely, but in order to gain information that are actually crucial for your case, you will have to go to very specific checkpoints. Once you do that, your map will expand, and the further from the river you go, the more complex the puzzles will be. You may wonder, okay, I have information, but what will I do with it? This is a puzzle game, so you will be able to, in this case, fill out the cards with people's names, occupations, and images, and each card you fill out will bring you one step closer to a mysterious cult, and more importantly, its leader, and hopefully, Anne. To go back to basics, our game has three main pillars: puzzle solving, mentioned before, freeform exploration, and time pressure. What does this mean? Remember, Lucien is an opium, and he hallucinates. So that will affect the gameplay in a way that whenever he is on opium or is experiencing very heavy withdrawal symptoms, your suspicion bar will fill out, and NPCs will not want to give you information. In the next slide, you will see another thing that will happen when he is experiencing hallucinations.
Do you remember? You lost. And
whenever Lucien is on opium, you as a player will be seeing this little boy everywhere. His name is Sugarhead, and he has two main functions in our game. One of them is narrative. He will tell you information about Lucien's past and help you with the story. But the other one is actually him giving you riddles in order to solve the main case of the game. As the game progresses, the riddles will be more and more complex. And to paint our world more vividly, as every detective, our detective also has a partner. He is an unusual guy. His name is Nicholas Schund, and he is a 24-year-old aspiring writer. When you cannot use your notes, you can use his. The only problem is that his notes are not conventional, because he is writing them as a novel called Mysteries of a Shadow City. And it will be another puzzle in the game. You need to understand his way of writing, which is usually tacky, in order to gain information you can actually use. Our game is for people who are 16 and older, fans of detective stories and people who enjoy solving puzzles. It is the most similar to these 3 games that are currently on the market: The Road Trees Are Dead, The Scenes of Blake Manor, and Return of the Obra Dinn. And just as these games, it combines puzzle and narrative elements. The price would be similar to these games, and it would be around 19 euros and 50 cents. The last question I have is, where is Anne? Thank you so much. We are Sugarheads.